Matt Walsh recently posted a video through PragerU University explaining why he thinks the concept of self-esteem is self-defeating, and says you should forget about trying to build your self-esteem altogether and just live your life without it. Unfortunately, Matt gets some crucial things wrong about what exactly self-esteem is and what kind of effects it can have on you and society in general. Let's get to it. Now, before I get started, I just want to say that I usually really like the content that PragerU puts out. They usually do a pretty good job of presenting their arguments clearly and concisely so that you can decide for yourself if you think they make sense or not. But do I think this video lives up to that reputation?
I would say no, emphatically.
Now, I think there are a lot of problems with Matt's video, but I'm going to try to stick to what I think is the core issue, which is self-esteem. Matt kicks off the video by asserting that the concept of self-esteem has no basis in reality whatsoever.
Self-esteem is a fantasy. It's a meaningless fabrication that exists only in your imagination.
Now, that's a pretty strong claim, so let's see how he tries to back it up.
Self-esteem, therefore, means to regard yourself with admiration. But is that how we should see ourselves? If someone asked you who you admire, would you really want to answer, well, I admire myself? Would that be a good thing? I would say no, emphatically.
First, that's a misrepresentation of what the concept of self-esteem actually means, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, notice that Matt asserts that regarding yourself with admiration would not be a good thing, but he presents no evidence to back up that claim. He just asks the question as if the answer is obvious, and to answer otherwise would be outrageous. Really? You really want to answer it that way?
I would say no, emphatically.
And that's his basic argument. Self-esteem means self-admiration, which must be a fantasy because if you tell people you admire yourself, they will morally judge you. Now, that's a pretty dishonest way to argue this point. He's substituting moral judgment for intellectual argument, which only works to intimidate his audience into signaling agreement with him. The message he's conveying here is, my position is obvious, and only those who are too immoral to see that, or perhaps too stupid, would disagree. Come on, Matt. Is that really how you want to treat your audience?
I would say no, emphatically.
Okay, so this video is obviously coming off to a rocky start, and unfortunately, Matt continues to take underhanded potshots at his opponents throughout the video. In the very next bit, he insinuates, among other indefensible claims, that proponents of self-esteem are actually to blame for the collapse of the American economy. For real.
I was hardly a precocious kid, but I think I realized this self-esteem thing was a racket as far back as junior high. I remember when the guidance counselor at my school handed out a worksheet and asked us to rate our self-esteem on a scale of 1 to 10. Meanwhile, kids in China were learning silly things like math and science. Now we're bankrupt and they own the country, but at least we all feel pretty good about ourselves.
What? I don't even know where to start with that one. I could go on and on about the underhanded tactics he uses here and other points in the video, but I want to focus on the core issue at hand, which is self-esteem. So here's what he says about the source of self-esteem.
Self-esteem, on the other hand, can be defined as unearned confidence. When I asked my teacher why I should have high self-esteem, she said, because you're special. When I asked why I was special, she said, because you're you. The person with high self-esteem, also known as a narcissist, feels good about himself on the basis of nothing. We may ask him, why do you esteem yourself? And his learned response will be, because I'm me. Like a modern-day narcissist, he can't see the world outside the window because he's too busy whispering sweet nothings to his reflection in the glass.
Now, this is a pretty common misunderstanding of what the concept of self-esteem actually means, and we'll get to all that in just a moment. But when an intellectual, such as Matt Walsh, comes onto a popular media outlet such as Prager University and perpetuates that misunderstanding, it becomes a misrepresentation. Not only that, but when he presents the opposing viewpoint, he chooses to cite one of the weakest arguments for self-esteem out there.
Of course, apologists will claim that self-esteem is simply about confidence, and that you need confidence to succeed in life. Okay, but if self-esteem is simply about confidence, then why don't we just call it confidence?
Well, because self-esteem is not simply about confidence. Yes, confidence is part of it, but there are other crucial elements at play that warrant integrating them under the wider concept of self-esteem. But let's focus on his views of confidence for a moment, because he says a lot of great things here, and we can tie into that in just a moment.
Because confidence must be earned. A student is confident about doing well on a test if he studies for it. An athlete is confident on the field if he practices. A singer is confident in her abilities if she, in fact, has abilities.
So he's basically saying that confidence is based on actual facts about yourself, your preparation, your skills, or your talents. But because he defines self-esteem as something that is unearned, he misses the fact that, just like confidence, self-esteem can and must be earned as well. And self-esteem is based on actual facts about yourself. Let's take a closer look and see what I mean by this.
See, that's the whole point of self-esteem. To be proud of yourself even when there's no reason to be proud of yourself.
Here's the problem with Matt's thinking on this. It doesn't make sense to define esteem as granting unearned admiration to someone. And it also doesn't make sense to define self-esteem as granting unearned admiration to yourself. He seems to be implying that esteem as such means granting something that is unearned. You can choose to esteem someone based on their character or their fame or their money or something else, but that doesn't change the fact that esteem can be earned or unearned. And that's the same thing with yourself. You can choose to esteem yourself for legit reasons or illegit reasons. But here's the reality of the situation. Self-esteem is about the judgment that we pass on ourselves as people. And of all the judgments that get passed on us in life, none are more important than the judgments we pass on ourselves. And so self-esteem is much more than just feeling good about yourself, or having a specific skill, or having confidence in one specific area or another. Nathaniel Branden, a pioneer of the self-esteem movement, defines it this way. Self-esteem is the disposition to experience oneself as being competent to cope with the basic challenges of life, and of being worthy of happiness. So self-esteem can be broken down into two separate aspects. The first is having confidence in your ability to deal with the basic challenges of life. Now, this is wider than being confident in one particular area or another. You can be confident that you'll ace an exam, or score a certain partner, or make a certain amount of sales, or make a lot of money, and yet at the same time, still experience low self-esteem. This is because high self-esteem includes the confidence that you can deal with any basic problem that life throws at you. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be super good at everything, or be a doomsday prepper, or never experience a failure in your life. It means you trust yourself to react appropriately to the daily challenges of life, and to do your best in everything that you do, rather than shrinking away from the challenges of life and perhaps drowning yourself in a mundane but safe lifestyle, or maybe doing drugs, or maybe sexual conquests, or any number of ways to escape the challenges of life. Now, the second aspect of self-esteem is experiencing yourself as being worthy of happiness. You might have all the confidence in the world and have all the skills and the talents to back that up. But if you don't feel that you are worthy of reaping the rewards of all those skills and talents, you'll never be happy. And this happens all the time. Think about all the celebrities and successful people who achieve incredible things and are incredibly productive or incredibly efficacious, and yet they still have guilt and anger and depression and fear and the whole 9 yards. And that's because confidence is not enough. You also need to feel worthy of reaping the rewards of all of your skills and talents. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy your life. So how does self-esteem actually affect your life? Here's what Nathaniel Branden has to say. Self-esteem is confidence in the efficacy of our mind and our ability to think, to move toward life rather than away from it, to move toward consciousness rather than away from it, to treat facts with respect rather than denial, to operate self-responsibly rather than the opposite. So how does this square with the way Matt portrays self-esteem and the effects that it will have on your life?
I'm special, love yourself, you get points for breathing dogma taints everything it touches. It equips you for nothing. It won't help you at school, it will stifle your career ambitions, and it will certainly wreak havoc on your relationships.
The issue with Matt's view of self-esteem is the absence of any reference to the importance of respect for the facts of reality and for thinking for yourself. Genuine self-esteem is about looking at the world the way it is, looking at yourself the way you are, and meeting those challenges head on and giving it your best shot and making your life worth living. So once considered this way, it's a total fantasy to say that self-esteem will actually prevent you from taking an honest, hard look at yourself and finding out where your weaknesses are and improving them. Now, Matt goes on to advise you to forget about the concept of self-esteem altogether and to just live your life without it.
I'm not saying that you should hate yourself, and I'm not saying that you should have low self-esteem. I'm saying have no self-esteem, as in stop thinking about it, period. Do good things with your life, and you'll have all the esteem you'll ever need.
I'm glad he doesn't encourage you to hate yourself, but consider what this implies if we take his advice at face value. Forget about the devotion to living consciously. Forget about trusting yourself to act self-responsibly. Forget about looking at the facts of reality and living with integrity. That's not the kind of life I want to live. What about you?
I would say no, emphatically.
All right, guys. That's it for my very first episode of Think Independent. Thank you so much for watching. Whether you loved it or hate it, let me know down in the comments. If you found this video interesting, go ahead and hit that like button and be sure to subscribe for future videos.